Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast. I'm your host, Byron Greeley, and today's guest is David Walsh, the founder of Limelight. Limelight is a platform for B2B creator marketing, basically connecting creators on platforms like LinkedIn with brands. And we have a really interesting conversation. We discuss things like the growing opportunity in the B2B creator marketing space, how to narrow down your niche and how beneficial that can be, the hardest parts of entrepreneurship, and how important sales can be in your entrepreneurial journey, and the importance of getting some sales experience. That's just a few things we cover in this conversation. It's a wide-ranging conversation, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Enjoy the show. Hey, David, thanks for joining me today. So you've founded multiple businesses, and I'm really excited to get into it all. But to start us off, could you tell us a bit about your current business, Limelight?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Byron. So I launched a company called Limelight, and what we do is influencer marketing for B2B, which means we work with creators who are typically thought leaders who have like a knowledge expertise in a specific domain, whether it's sales, marketing, customer success, operations, finance, been creating content for a couple of years and have built a following on LinkedIn or Twitter, um, maybe sometimes a newsletter, but they haven't really monetized their audience yet through brand partnerships. So we created a platform in which they can monetize their audience through brand partnerships, and initially focused on creators to begin with, and then started to build out the brand side. So it's a marketplace, both supply and demand. And the goal for brands is to be able to connect with content creators to scale their reach and get much better return on investment from ad spend. So they partner with these creators who tell authentic stories about how the product that they use solves their problems. And we feel like that's the future of marketing, is storytelling and like persona driven. So seeing a lot of success right now. Had about 500 brands sign up and over 3,000 creators in the last 6 months. So it feels like the right time to launch something like this. And I think influencer marketing has existed for a long time in B2C. It's relatively new for B2B. So I'd say that a lot of my time is spent like educating brands, setting expectations, and creating more clarity, consistency, and transparency to the industry through technology. And so that's a little bit about what we're building. And yeah, excited to tell you more.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And yeah, I've definitely noticed a trend in um, creators having more of an impact than, the traditional marketing channels that previously were the norm. And I'm curious, what gave you the idea to start Limelight?
That's a really great question. Like first things first, I had no idea about influencer marketing in B2B 12 months ago.
Wow.
I had launched an e-commerce watch company in 2017, 2018 that I actually scaled using influencers. So we had the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders wearing our watches at one point, which is my claim to fame. So I knew a little bit about influencer marketing. Um, and I knew quite a bit about B2B software. My last company was a HR software company that scaled through a Series A, and we had over 250 customers, raised quite a bit of capital. But I didn't know anything about B2B influencer marketing. And so 12 months ago, maybe 18 months ago, I launched with a brand originally called Bundle. And Bundle was a referral software for other businesses. And the goal was to influence users of your product as a B2B company to introduce more users. And in launching the company and raising capital, I started posting content on LinkedIn every day and realized just the power of LinkedIn content if you do it consistently and over a period in time. And so got very immersed into the creator economy almost accidentally. And I just realized throughout the process that there was a big market opportunity to build something and it didn't exist. And so I just decided to go and build it. And so by January, pivoted the business after raising 1.1 million in pre-seed funding for the original business, which was called Bundle, and said, you know what, this is the business we need to build, and here's why. Um, and so final thought on all of that is like, I'm very focused, like religiously focused on distribution. I think distribution is far more important than the product and technology. I think it's getting easier, at least more cost effective to build software today than it ever has been before. And so now the value and the intellectual property and the competitive moat, in my opinion, is all in distribution. And so that's why I'm very bullish and very excited about what we're building and the paths we can take this and the optionality it creates as we start to grow that distribution engine.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'd like to go a bit deeper. You covered it in your um, when you explained what Limelight does, but I'd like to go a bit deeper into like why do you think there is such a big opportunity in B2B marketing at the moment?
Do you mean B2B marketing as an industry, like as a whole?
Yeah. So, or yeah, what's the opportunity in like combining the creator-led element with B2B marketing, and why is it different to like how original or the old school B2B marketing used to be done?
Yeah, I have two main points on that. Like, first one is it is getting more and more expensive to acquire new customers. It's growing at like 15% year over year. Digital ads on LinkedIn, on Google, on Facebook are just it's so expensive to acquire customers. You're competing on keywords with all your competitors. So the return on ad spend for every single brand and every single head of marketing I speak with is like getting worse and worse, and they're starting to panic. And so that's number one. There's this driving, forcing mechanism of like, we need better return on investment. This unit economics, this customer acquisition costs, our CAC does not make sense for the lifetime value of our user. So they're looking at different channels. They're looking at podcasts. They're looking at newsletters. And now they're starting to think about social. So that's number one. Number two, if successful in B2B, an influencer or a creator can influence the deal. And if they influence one deal, that deal could be worth 25K annual contract value, 50K annual contract value, sometimes a couple of 100K in lifetime value. So it's very different than B2C. In B2C, you can have 1 million followers on Instagram, take a picture of yourself selling sunglasses, and the conversion rate might be 0.5%, and you sell 500 or 5,000 sunglasses. I'll let you do the math on that one. But the point is that it's not that one or two sales make a huge difference. So that's what I'm very bullish on. It's like if you can scale this and do it well and make it authentic, like I think that's a big part of influence marketing in B2B. Like these are professionals, these are personal brands. These people care a lot about the types of partnerships that they form. So we ask that they form long-term partnerships with products that they use that are authentic and they can tell a story of how it solved a problem. So those are kind of the two main things. It's ad spend. Companies are struggling. Now they're looking to reallocate ad spend to other channels. And then number two is influencers in B2B have a huge impact on revenue if successful.
Yeah. And how do the partnerships work? Is there sort of like a set agreement between the two parties, or is it kind of up to them to decide the terms and how the creators are paid?
Yeah, it varies quite a bit. And that's kind of the opportunity in my mind. It's like, how do we create more consistency, more transparency, more structure, more like we're creating benchmarks around compensation? Because the truth is, creators don't know how much to charge and brands don't know how much to pay. That's the honest
Yeah.
truth. And once we prove that this is generating revenue, then brands are willing to increase their budget dramatically. And we're seeing that happen right now. Um, so it really depends on the brand. And I spend a good amount of time educating them on like how to set these things up for success. Because a lot of the time we find that companies who have tried this, which is few, but there are people that have tried this, sometimes have a bad experience. The expectations aren't set. They come, they test it, they dip their toe in the water, they say, oh, that didn't work. We're not going to do that again. Didn't get what we need because it's not measurable. So I would say like we spend a good amount of time educating brands and setting them up for success and making sure we identify the right types of creators who have the right types of engagement on the audiences that they're looking for. And then we set up campaigns that we believe will drive value. It starts with setting expectations, setting goals and objectives, making clear, like, here's the objective, it's brand awareness, but we also need a certain amount of impressions, a certain amount of website traffic, a certain amount of click-throughs and demos. And then our goal is to go and help them execute on that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And um, How exactly does the business model work? Because you said you have the demand and supply side. So is it subscription based only for the brands and any creator can join, or yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, so pricing will evolve dramatically. My number one goal at the beginning was build a marketplace. If you know anything about building marketplaces, they are super difficult. It's like really challenging because you have to get supply and demand. You have to get enough supply and enough demand. So we made it free for 6 months. We said, let's sign up as many companies, as many creators as we can, and really like make the transactions happen and solve the cold start problem, get the traction going within the marketplace, add value. And then we only charge the brand. So we don't try to charge transaction fees. That might change and might evolve, but right now we just charge a subscription fee to the brand. We don't charge the creator. And the subscription fee is anywhere from $149 a month, which is fully self-serve, do it yourself. If you subscribe for the year, it's $119 a month. So it's affordable. And then for the premium package, it's $399 a month. And for the premium package, it's kind of what I just said, which is we help make sure that we set them up for success. We get the campaigns, we do the strategy, we write some of the copy, we understand what they're trying to execute on, and then we identify the top creators, and really just like make sure that they're going to have a good experience. And so that's $399 a month.
Awesome. And can any creator join, or is there some sort of vetting process? Because I can imagine like this is a great opportunity for creators, but you'd only want the best creators on your platform in order to deliver results.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe the first thing to call out too is like, it's not just for huge creators. Like, I think when you think of creators, people think, oh, I need to have 50,000 followers or I need to have 100,000 followers. Like, that's not true. Actually, some of the best performing campaigns that we've run have been with creators with much less followers, like 10,000 followers, for example, because they're authentic, right? So we want to make sure that the platform is open to lots of types of creators. Um, we allow them to sign up and create an account. We won't show them on the database until a human has actually validated and verified them. So we want to make sure that there's a high quality and a high bar in terms of the experience for brands, that they're not just going to go in and find anyone on LinkedIn on our database. They have to be high quality creators. And the things that we really care about are engagement rate. That's the only thing. Follower count does not matter, especially on LinkedIn. I've seen creators with 250,000 followers on LinkedIn and they get, let's call it 10,000 impressions on a post. And then I've seen creators with 10,000 followers on LinkedIn who get 50,000 impressions. And so engagement's really important. And that's kind of the driving force versus follower count. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And you mentioned that you kind of fell into building your own personal brand. And I'm curious, like, how has building your own personal brand, like, how has that experience been? And have sort of opportunities come from it? Have brands approached you? Like, what has come from you building your own personal brand?
It's just such a good question. My only regret is not doing it sooner. And
Interesting.
what I mean by that is I built a company that was quite successful and scaled it for many, many years. And I just didn't speak publicly about it. I don't know why. I just didn't. This time I said, okay, I've done it behind closed doors. Now I'm going to go do it in public. And I cannot tell you how powerful building in public is. Um, so it requires consistency. It requires more than anything else, like consistency of content. And then I build like top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel content. Bottom of funnel is me talking very specifically about Limelight, gets the lowest engagement, but the highest quality engagement. Middle of funnel would be me talking about the marketing industry or influencer marketing or anything related to the industry in general. And then top of funnel would be me talking about stuff that's more universally understood, whether it's remote working or um, employee benefits or things that I know that will perform well. And then that creates this content funnel. And that content funnel, we create like a content calendar so that we're constantly layering in different types of content and different types of formats. And I don't know, I get asked this like every few days now because my content is kind of getting a lot of engagement at the moment, which is great. And it's the number one driving force of Limelight's growth is just my content. So I get asked regularly, like, what are you doing? How do you do this? Like, how should I keep doing this? And my honest opinion is just get started. once you start writing your own content, you'll figure out if you like it or not. Like, I do miss the days, if I'm honest with you, of not being addicted to LinkedIn and like checking my LinkedIn to see how many likes and impressions I got. But it's a huge driver of growth for us. So that's the only thing I care about is like, can my content generate revenue? And if it can, then I'm going to double down. And so now I've turned a lot to the video content. We publish a video content once a week, if not twice a week now, with more coming. And that's been performing insanely well. Like one of our posts last week on a video post got 3.5 million impressions,
Wow.
1,000 engagements. And so the reach is incredible. And what's fascinating, honestly, in all of this is like I've been doing it now for 9 months, 6 months aggressively building my own personal brand. I've gone from maybe 8 to 9,000 followers to 23, 24,000 followers, right? So good growth in 6 months, definitely. The thing that I think is really interesting is when I meet people now, they kind of know me. You come into the meeting, not all the time, don't get me wrong, but like if I'm following them on LinkedIn, I'm pretty aggressive with if I'm meeting somebody, I'm like connecting with them on LinkedIn because I know they're going to see my content before the meeting. And then I know they're going to see my content after the meeting. And so you kind of get this like relatability, which is kind of cool. So they get to know you, they get to understand a little bit about you pre and post call. And then also writing your content like helps create clarity. You have to have a point of view and opinion, and that is a really good behavior to have, and like um a recurring like thing I do every day or every week, and I kind of enjoy it. So yeah, that's how I'm building it. Maybe I know I'm going on here, but I think it's also good to know because I've shared this with my friends specifically who are thinking about building their own personal brand. I have the benefit that I'm building a personal brand, but I'm also building a product for creators within LinkedIn. So I naturally get a lot of engagement from creators because I'm working with them, or they know about me, or they know I'm building a product to help them make money. And I think that's kind of a flywheel.
Yeah.
We're only at the early stages of that. Like I want to get to 50,000 followers ASAP. And I'm doubling down on all content. And I think it's the most powerful way to grow. I think every single founding team of a company in 2025 should have a creator as a co-founder.
Yeah, I agree. Or even if the co-founder starts creating, but they make a conscious effort of building in public, like you just said, because they're all great points, and I don't really see any downside to it. Um, and you touched on video, and obviously LinkedIn is now pushing video quite a lot. And you said that sometimes for the brands, you'd even write some of the posts and like send them to the creators to post them. But I imagine video could be a little trickier because then you're getting the creators to go an extra step and like film it and stuff like that. Have you run into any obstacles with that yet, or is it still very new?
Yeah. Well, one point of clarity, we don't write content on behalf of the creators. We actually think the creators are amazing at their job, which is
Okay.
they know their audience, they know their voice, they know how to tell stories. The one piece of advice that I do have for brands is let the creators have the creative freedom to write their own content and tell their story the way they think it should be told, because that's how it performs best. Um, with video, that's relatively new, if I'm honest with you. Like LinkedIn started pushing video aggressively about 3 months ago,
Yeah.
realistically. And now you're seeing a lot of creators start to transition to um, content and video content. It's typically for their own audience. It's not a brand partnership, although I've seen examples of it done really well with brand partnerships. Um, we're definitely exploring it. Like, how do we help support creators creating video on behalf of brands? Um, the honest truth is it's a higher production value. It takes a really good creator, takes 5 to 10 minutes to write a post. To create a video, 1 to 2 to 3 hours. I don't even know. It can vary. So it's much more costly. So it would just need to drive the right amount of value. I think it will, and it does, but the brands have to be willing to pay.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you touched on previously that you started a couple businesses before Limelight. Um, And one was an HR software, and the other one was a watch brand. Two quite different things, even to personal branding, or B2B marketing. So could you tell me a bit about those two businesses, just for a bit of context?
Yeah, well, I'll start with that's my watch. I still keep one on
Awesome.
my desk. I sold a lot of watches and I sold the company, but I kept a few, and I always keep this one on my desk. It's my favorite color. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a gold
Yeah,
face black. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Truth is with entrepreneurship, I think you can have an idea. Lots of people have great ideas. It's about execution. That's the only thing that matters and getting started. And I knew that I loved e-commerce. Like I really thought e-commerce was powerful and exciting back in 2016, 2017. And I liked watches. And so one day I just decided, let's go build a watch company. And so I made all the mistakes you can make as a first time founder. Number one, I manufactured the watch myself and custom built it with the
Oh, wow.
manufacturer, which instead of just using a CAD design, if anyone knows about manufacturing, like I should have just used a mold that they already had because it became 10 times more expensive. But the things that I did well were branding and marketing. And like I have a branding and marketing background. I'm a salesperson by trade, but I did, marketing in college. I then did a master's in marketing. And I think a lot about growing brands as like the exciting, fun stuff to do. So that's what I wanted to do. And so we launched a company called Chase West. The idea was it was like a Daniel Wellington, if you've seen them. So like an affordable watch for $100. And we focused it on like patriotic country Americans. We said, okay, they have jeans, they have suede hats, they have cowboy boots, but they don't have watches. And so we decided to build a watch company for them. I started growth hacking the Instagram of the account of the like our personal business account, and out of nowhere, I got an inbound from an equine photography workshop, which was like horses, and they were doing like photography for horses. So they asked me, "Hey, we're doing a photo shoot. We've got 20 horses and 20 photographers, and they're all like training photographers, and we've got 4 or 5 models on the horses, and we're shooting in 24 hours or 48 hours from now in Santa Barbara." And I had just moved to LA, and they messaged me, and I said, "I'll be there." So I brought the prototypes of the watches. There wasn't even like we hadn't even manufactured the watch yet. It was just a prototype, and I put them on all the models' wrists, and we went around the horses. It was absolutely incredible. The photography. It was like one was a countryside and hills, and one was on the beach. And so what ended up happening is I came out with probably 1,000 photos that were so
Wow.
professional of all of 5 different models, 20 different photographers all sent me their photos for free.
Wow.
And I ended up turning the company into a watch company for horse lovers. And that's how it evolved. And so again, accidentally, but had a lot of fun with it. And I'd say like, that was a great experience. I ended up selling the company to a buyer in San Francisco in 2019. And then I decided to take some time off. Didn't like the time off, to be honest. I thought I'd love it, but wanted to go build stuff almost immediately. I had moved to Los Angeles because my wife got a job at Netflix. And so I launched a company called Matheson, which was a HR software company. And that was very focused on helping companies identify underrepresented talent. I was an immigrant to the United States, so that was kind of the passion that I had, is how do we help immigrants? And then it evolved into a DEI software company. And so we helped companies identify underrepresented talent and then help them create more equitable hiring processes, which is kind of an experience that I had in the United States, being on a visa and being an immigrant. And so the company did really well. We worked with over 250 customers. We raised over $30 million in venture capital. And yeah, it was an amazing experience of taking a company from 0 to 1. And then we started scaling revenue to many millions. And so I got all that experience and made some mistakes along the way. But most of my career was in HR tech. And that's why I decided that this next business, I want to get into revenue tech. I want to be building in marketing and sales because that's really my domain expertise. It's what excites me the most. So a long-winded answer to your question of my 2 businesses. One was an e-commerce watch company focused on horses. And then one was a HR software company focused on B2B brands. And we worked with major companies like Visa, Bank of America. We worked with Accenture, Bristol Myers Squibb, so pretty large enterprises, all the way down to like high growth companies like TripAdvisor and things like that. So really good experience.
That's so interesting. And like one of the main messages or things I try to get out of each episode of my podcast is like understanding that beginning phase And I'd like to really understand, like, what caused you to start your watch company, going from like a normal 9 to 5 and then deciding to start the business. Like, where was there a mindset set shift, or did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Like, how did that happen?
Honestly, great question. The truth is, and I tell this to other budding entrepreneurs, I didn't want to work for anyone else. That was it. Every day that I woke up and I went to work and I worked for somebody else really started to frustrate me. I don't know why. I like it's an easier life. It's much more safe and secure and like calm working for other people. But for some reason, it was just like a driving motivator to me. I want to be my own boss. And that was from a very young age. When I was 19 back in Ireland, my dad asked me, what do I want to be? And I was like, I want to be a tech entrepreneur. Want to run a tech company and I want to run one by I'm 25. And he was like, what? Like, that's kind of crazy. And the truth is I manifested it and it happened. And says, I think I was 27 when I started running my tech company after selling the watch company. And so I called him up and I said, I'm 2 years late, but I did it. So yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, I just wanted to be one early age.
That's awesome. So, and how do you go about like picking your next venture or what to work on next?
Yeah. I would say for every 100 ideas that I have 99 bad ones, like really bad ideas. So when I was thinking about what I was going to do next, it went in everything from like a nappy delivery service to like a crypto exchange to landing in, okay, let's just stay in what you know, Dave, B2B software. Let's go do that. And then I just narrowed in on revenue tech. Um, so it's kind of a process. And I made the mistake in the past of jumping into things that I wasn't like extremely passionate about. I think the number one thing you have to be is like, because it is a slog, it is a grind. You have to be passionate about what you're doing because you're going to get knocked down so many times that if you're not extremely passionate about what you're doing, you're going to fail. So that was the number one goal. Do something that I loved, something I'm passionate about, something I have a bit of experience in. So that landed me at revenue tech, B2B, marketing and sales. That was the kind of category. And then I just went to market. And when it's then there's a research and discovery phase, which is like understanding the market in depth. So I spent like at least 8 weeks going in deep on every aspect of revenue tech across sales, marketing, customer success, in every vertical and every channel. And I picked out all of the different top companies and all of the different, innovative new startups. And I said, where is the opportunity? And the opportunity is there's a lot of tech in revenue tech because if you're successful, you're helping companies grow. So everyone wants to get into revenue tech. So it's very saturated. And so I ended up landing on referral software, which then landed me on influencer marketing. And that's kind of the process. And I would say like, I think the message in that is get started because whatever idea you have for your bit, get started because whatever idea you have for your business is going to evolve. It's never going to be the exact same idea that you had in the initial stages. So you just have to get started and start executing.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms like, it seems like you had a very like calculated approach to starting Limelight, but did you have the same approach to the previous two businesses? Because I mean, landing on a watch company uh, focused on like a Western sort of cowboy type of market is quite an interesting approach. And you're saying you're from Ireland. That's even sounds even more interesting to me to like double down on that niche. Like, how do you land on something like that?
Yeah. Well, like I think number one, focus on something that you're interested in, like, and you have a bit of experience in it. You've got like, and yeah, it gets you excited. And number two, do your research. Like the only reason I launched a, you know, watch company focused on that demographic is because I researched the demographic for months and said, this is what the brand needs to be. This is the segment of the market that's underserved. The same with HR tech. I said, okay, where is the opportunity? What does not exist today? And that is how you create a company with success in the early stages, is by being unique and being different. Everyone will tell you, don't don't make the total addressable market too small, because you're going to fail. It's not going to be big enough. You're not going to raise capital. It's not going to be investable. Well, I actually disagree. I think having a very specific niche and problem that you solve in the early days is far more important than a generic, broad approach. So niche down, get good at one thing, focus on that, build a brand around that, be known for that, and then expand and grow and see where it takes you.
That's great advice. And in terms of validating that idea, you said you do a lot of research. Were there any other approaches that you took, or was it all just research and then diving right in, or were there a few testing phases in between that and actually launching?
I think it starts with the research of the industry before you go and do anything else. But the next stage is almost more important, which is speaking to people. You can't just come up with ideas and theses and say, oh, I know what I'm talking about. You need to back it up with data. How do you get data? You go and speak to people. So I spent a lot of time speaking with individuals and trying to have conversations and coffee chats where I ask them questions. And so you get hyper targeted on that. User feedback, user research is so important. Don't get overly concerned about having like a million conversations before making a decision. That can also get you in like decision paralysis. You just need to have a few high quality, very targeted conversations, and then ask the same questions, figure out themes, identify common themes and pain points, and then go solve them, and then create a repeatable, data-driven product and business.
Awesome. And when it came time to exit or sell your businesses, how did you know it was the right time?
That's a really tough question. Is there ever a right time? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, neither do I.
It kind of just happens. Um, you can certainly get distracted in the early days with like offers and conversations from bigger companies that are interested in exploring partnerships and potentially acquisitions. And I think they're all distractions. I think like you avoid them at all costs. The thing is, when you know that the time is right. And it usually has something to do with like the traction of the business, the market, and how it's doing at that moment in time. Is it up? Is it down? Um, and then it kind of just like the universe speaks to you and you have a good instinct.
Interesting. And this might be a tricky question to answer, but what has been the hardest part of your entrepreneurial journey so far?
I could tell you 4 stories. I have a lot of
Please.
scars. Um, some of them are maybe more confidential than others. I think entrepreneurship is a battle. It's a battle of the mind. And I think at times you can get a little bit astray. If you're not looking after yourself, that could become challenging, you know? And sometimes you need to be, my honest opinion over doing this now for 6 years is exercise is key, because it gives me clarity on businesses, and it relieves a lot of stress. So running, hate running. Now I like running. Only because I don't actually like the process of running. I like the clarity it gives me and the feeling I get after. I hate running. like, but I like it at the end. So in answer to your question, the number one thing, I think the thing that comes to mind, which is probably the biggest, most impactful, most painful thing that I ever had to do, is I had to one day fire 24 people
Wow.
that I had hired. And at 7 a.m. in the morning, Pacific time, every 15 minutes, I let go of 24 people back to back in one day. And the reason I had to do that was because I made the mistake of hiring too many people before we had pure product market fit. And I had made a commitment to those people to hire them. And some were with us for 3 months, some were with us for 3 years or more. And on that day, I had to let each and every one of them know that because of my decisions, they would no longer have a job and their job was eliminated. And so you learn a lot in growing a business. You learn a lot more in contracting a business. And so I learned a lot from that experience and the mistakes that I made, and I will not make them again, which means I will only scale this next company, Limelight, once we have product market fit, to ensure I never have to do that again.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for that answer. That must have been really tough. And what's the best part about running your own business?
I think the decision-making freedom and empowerment and excitement. I have a internal value or like mantra with my teams, which is you have to celebrate the small wins. Even if it seems meaningless, you have to celebrate them. So when we hit 50K in transactions on the platform in the first 2 months of launching Limelight, I was like, this is a huge milestone. Like, we need to celebrate this. So it's kind of that empowerment to make decisions unilaterally, the speed at which you're able to make decisions. As a founder and CEO, you're basically in charge. Whatever you say has to happen. The impact of your behaviors and your action and the accountability that you have. If I don't turn up to work, I don't expect my team to want to turn up to work. So my mindset empowers my team. And more recently, my team will tell you, I have turned up the heat internally. We are at full throttle. And I think I still have another 20%. So we work in sprints. We work aggressively hard and fast. We celebrate the wins. And I enjoy being an entrepreneur because you reap the rewards of your own hard work.
That's so interesting because quite a few of the things you listed there also seem like quite a lot of pressure. And would you say you thrive under pressure? Because I think some people may not be able to cope with that amount of like responsibility and pressure.
I think I have a few screws loose. I
I think
honestly
we all
do.
do.
Yeah, no, I swear I think I have a few screws loose. If things are too easy or too calm or too relaxing, I find them incredibly boring and mundane. I thrive in the chaos, and startups is chaos. So to answer your question, like, do I feel the pressure? I feel it more than anything. And I do my best work in under pressure. And I think that's true for many people. Learning how to manage the pressure, learning how to manage the stress, never perfect. I've got better at it, but I'm not perfect. There's times where I'm way overstressed. And I think how that manifests for me, at least, is my mind is distracted on the weekends. Sometimes I'm vacant. Somebody's talking to me and I'm solving problems in my brain all the time. So it's definitely not for everyone. Like, I wake up at 6 a.m, I'm thinking about business. I go to sleep at 1 a.m. at night working and I thinking about my business. I wake up at 4 a.m, I'm solving problems. And that has consequences. But I also spent some time off and I did the opposite and I did nothing. And for me personally, just me, my own experiences, doing nothing is far worse than the stress and the pressure that I have on a day-to-day basis, because I have a purpose. And so I want to continue to have a purpose, and building stuff makes me happy and excited. And you got to roll with the punches. The ups are up, the downs are down. Learning how to manage them is what you can only learn through experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if I know you said that like advice you'd give to someone is kind of just start. But if you couldn't say just start, and if someone had a business idea, was a bit nervous about starting, what kind of advice would you give them to start their business?
I think people take too many silly risks in the early stages. Like, you have an idea and you want to go start it. So you quit your job and you go all in, and you figure out you can't sustain yourself with no revenue and no income for 3 to 6 months. And then you're stressed, you're worried, your partner's upset, your life falls apart and your business falls apart and you have to go back to work. That's an unnecessary decision. The things that you should be doing is validating that you want to be an entrepreneur by doing it outside of your job. Like, I started my watch company while I had a full-time job, and I was essentially acting as the head of sales of a Series A company. And I was working from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Well, 5:15 p.m. to 10 p.m. Sometimes later, I was working on my watch company. So don't take unnecessary risks is the message in that. De-risk your decision making as much as possible. On a higher theoretical, like almost counseling, believe in yourself. Like, you have to believe in yourself, because if you're not confident in your own thoughts and beliefs, you're not going to be able to convince other people. And then you're going to give up because other people will tell you wrong. So get used to being told no all the time on a daily basis and thrive in those no's. And then you get one yes. For every 50 no's you get one yes. And that yes is what keeps you going. So don't take unnecessary risks. Thrive in the getting told no, and get used to working hard.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and all really important for people to understand. Like, it also takes a lot of hard work. Like you said, you're working 5 to 10 in the evening on your watch brand after work, and now you're waking up at 6 a.m. or going to bed at 1 a.m. thinking about work. Like, it's a grind and it doesn't come easy. But yeah, I think that was a really, really great advice. And how?
Just one last thing on that, because I think it's really, really important, especially for anyone that's listening to this, right? Like, I've talked about the ups and downs, I've talked about the highs and the lows, I've talked about, some of the challenges, some of my advice, and I've talked about the hard work. In, that level of intensity of hard work, people can get turned off by that sometimes, of like, oh, you know what? Like, I probably don't want to do that. Like, that's going to be too intense. It's going to be too hard work. But if you've not been an entrepreneur, then you think of work in a very different way. You think of work of, I'm working and I'm getting a paycheck. And then if I'm working outside of my 9 to 5, that doesn't compute, doesn't make sense. When it's your business and you own it, it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
Like, I don't watch Netflix. I sit down, look at the TV, take out my laptop and start working, because I enjoy that more than I do watching Netflix. So the message in that is that it doesn't feel like work when it's your business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you get better at hearing no and pushing forward? Because a lot of people, like, that's a huge blocker for people. Like, they're afraid of that rejection. You hear no one too many times and you sort of give up.
I can only speak from my own personal experience. And so the best thing I ever did in the early stages of my career was work in cold outbound sales. Pick up the phone 60 times a day. I had to make 60 dials a day and outbound cold call people. And everyone thinks, who hasn't done that, oh, you must love chatting to people. And, you must love, like, manipulating people and selling people. No, the thing that you learn the fastest is how to accept no, because you get no every day. And so I was personally numb to it because I had got used to getting told no on the phone. And so my advice is, if you're anyway interested in entrepreneurship or sales, is such a good path to get told no on an ongoing basis. And then the skill set you learn within sales allows you everything in life is sales, in my opinion. You have to influence your investors. You have to influence your customers. You have to influence your team to be hired, to be employees. You have to influence a lot of things. So sales taught me no. That's just my personal experience. Getting told no is not easy.
And I noticed that you were a part of Hampton. Could you briefly explain what Hampton is and how you found being a part of it?
So absolutely, Hampton is a network of CEOs who are vetted and highly qualified, typically have an exit or have raised quite a substantial amount of capital. And it's a vetted community of CEOs and founders. And the idea is that you can share knowledge, share resources, share experiences, um, and be part of a community and find like-minded people who are interested in the same thing. So as a CEO and as a founder, it's super lonely, you know? I don't think anyone talks about that, by the way. Like, it's lonely. There's very few people that can relate. Even my friends for many, many years can't really relate when you tell them what you're doing and what the pains are that you're having and the challenges and the stress. The people that can are the people that have been there and done that. And so that's what Hampton is all about. I love the community. You know, there's a Slack channel, there's loads of resources, there's lots of events that are in person. Honestly, I probably should have put more time into it. I've been super heads down building my company. And so I need to invest a bit more time into it. It's probably a good reminder, actually, to go and reach out to my fellow Hamptons friends here in LA. And then there's different chapters all across the United States. And so, yeah, it's great. Um, It's somewhat validating too. I think I'm a marketing person, branding person. So just from my perspective, like I think they've done a really good job on building this community and people from the outside looking in being like, I want to be part of that, you know? Um, that's a great brand that they've built.
Yeah. I'm a fan of Sam Parr and his My First Million podcast. So that's why I was curious and wanted to ask. Because yeah, I can see how being part of a vetted community like that can be really helpful because, as you said, the entrepreneurial journey is quite a lonely one. Um, and we'll also admire it from the outside looking in because of how good they are at marketing it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's who's part of it, like any community, like any group, right?
Yeah.
You look at some people that are part of it and you're like, oh, wow, they're part of that group. I want to be part of that group. So
Yeah, exactly.
there's a little bit of that going on, which I think is extremely powerful.
Yeah. And in line with that, have you had any like mentors or partners that have helped you along the way?
I wish I had more, if I'm honest with you. And that's not speaking badly of the ones that I have had. I think I've had experiences with people and create quite deep relationships with people along the way. For example, the best thing I ever did was hire an executive coach.
Interesting.
Hired him 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. We just raised $3.7 million from Bain Capital Ventures back in 2020. And I was like, I'm way over my skis. I got to grow this business. And, I'm a big believer in learning quickly and fast and identifying what you don't know. And so an executive coach helped me self-reflect, helped me commiserate from time to time, was a person to lean on, somebody in my corner. So that's one thing that I did. And I think any founder, anyone that's listening out there, executive coaches can be super important because selfishly, I actually think that they're the only people that are in your corner and looking out for you other than your life partner. When you start to grow a business, everyone essentially has a slight bias towards their own internal selfish goals and ambitions. So as you scale an organization, you start to realize that like what you're being told from one person versus what you're told for the other person might actually be what's best for them, not what's best for you. And so investing in yourself and having somebody to go to give you good, honest, critical advice and feedback is so important. So that was one mentor of mine. I actually caught up with him. I haven't worked with him for 2 years, but he called me out of nowhere only 2 days ago, actually. And we caught up and it was nice to hear his voice. He helped me through a lot of tough times. Um, and then other mentors were just like non-formal, you know, business colleagues and people who had hired me. I'll point one out, which is the first CEO of the first tech company that I interned at for free. If he's listening to
Oh,
this, he hired me for free. Um, No, I'm joking. His name's Rod Smith. He's CEO and founder of a company called Glide Talent, AI for recruiting. And he was a mentor of mine because 10 years ago, he hired me, and he was the first experience that I had at like a small, less than 15 employees in a startup in Ireland, in Dublin. And I got exposure to the CEO as my first real job. And the first thing he told me is, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm the smartest at finding other people who are incredibly good at their job and getting them to work together. I will never forget that quote because that's something I live by myself internally. So there are just two people that come to mind when he's asked me about mentors.
Oh, that's awesome. That's an awesome quote. And what is the 5-year plan for Limelight?
God, and talk to me about the 3-month plan. You know, I think I honestly, that's my answer. Like
Yeah.
with startups, I can have a goal and ambition of what I want to achieve with a certain company. And I think it's more importantly to get it directionally right. The number one priority is to focus on the urgency of here and now. What do we need to solve today for the next 6 months? What do we need to get right for the next 1 month? And then that helps break down some of the marathon that is startups into like sprints. And it really helps not get overwhelmed. But at the same time, I'm a visionary. Like I think of ideas all the time. Sometimes my team are like, stop coming up with new ideas. Like, no, that's my job. Like I have to come up with ideas of where we can take this. And so to answer your question and give you a bit better of a how I actually think about the world and why I'm doing what I'm doing, I think of Limelight as a distribution engine. And I think as we scale distribution and we're working with 450 companies, 500 plus companies, and we start to help them with content partnerships, we can start to show and scale and have reach that can be applied to many different things. So whether I go and create a venture capital VC $100 million fund that invests in companies and then plugs them into the Limelight platform, whether we do that internally at Limelight, we start to like invest in other companies as we start to help them with distribution and growth. Whether we start to think about the data that we're collecting at scale and how content we can start to show interactions with content that show social signals and give intent data back to brands to be better and more targeted in their marketing. I think there's many paths to go down, and we're not 100% sure exactly where it'll all flesh out, but directionally, as I think about where we're going, I care a lot about distribution. I care a lot about marketing. And I want to make sure that what we do build adds value to customers. And, the reason I pivoted from the referral software, which was very internally focused for a business, we said, we're going to help you with your own users. The reason I pivoted to influencers, because external and partnering with external partners, I think influencer marketing in B2B just gives us a lot of optionality. So what do I mean by optionality? I mean, it creates a lot of opportunities that we can go down, both for me personally with my personal brand, the business, as the business grows and scales with all of the companies we're working with. We're working with their heads of marketing, heads of growth, heads of sales. We're just learning, what are their challenges? What are their worries? What are their issues? How are we solving them? And if we can help them prove revenue and growth, then we can start to reinvest into other product verticals. And who knows?
Awesome. That's really interesting. And before I end every conversation, I ask my guests if they have a question for me.
Other than I'm a huge fan of South Africa, and I'm going to South Africa in February. My brother-in-law is getting married there.
Awesome.
Shout out to
Great
my
place
brother-in-law.
to get married there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great place to get
yeah,
married.
in Hermanus, which
Oh,
is 2
nice.
hours north
Beautiful.
of Cape Town.
Yeah.
So we'll be there for the whole month of February. Very excited about that. So I have 2 questions for you. The first question is, what do you hope to accomplish with this podcast as you start to speak to more guests?
What I hope to accomplish is more of a selfish one. I hope to learn as much as I can, um, help other people wanting to start, and build out my network. I think it's really valuable having conversations like this, spending an hour with someone when uh, they end up doing most of the talking. Most of the time, they leave that conversation feeling like it was a good conversation. And so I find that really valuable in building relationships. And so there are aspects of if the podcast were to grow and I monetize it and things like that, I think I see those as added bonuses. But more like selfishly, I think the benefits for me are just learning and building out my network. Those are the main priorities for me.
That's awesome. The reason I ask is that the stories that the people and your guests tell can have a huge impact on your audience. So I thought about launching my own podcast. I just didn't have the time. That's my excuse, right? Like that's an excuse. I can make time, but I don't know. I just didn't do it. But if I was to launch a podcast, I would obviously the relationship building is amazing. I agree with you 100%. And I like the selfish approach. I think that's something that was keeps you in the game and doing it for longer because
Yeah.
you understand how it grows your relationships. But the stories that are told and the people that you can touch and the people that listen to this, and the impact that can have could be super interesting and valuable. So collecting that feedback from your audience and say, was there anything that came up in these conversations that helped you with your business or helped you, being stuck or got you excited and motivated to start your own thing? I'm sure there's plenty of that. And so if you keep doing what you're doing, speaking to people like myself and others, you're going to end up influencing people indirectly and directly, actually, um, in a very positive way. So I love it. My second question, w- you're based in South Africa, is that right?
I'm based in London.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So when was the last time you were in South Africa?
Oof, like just over 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then this might be a bit outdated, but my question is like, what's entrepreneurship? What are some of the what are some of the challenges and some of the opportunities within South Africa for entrepreneurship?
Um, so what I'm noticing quite a bit is there's quite a bit of skilled. There's an arbitrage in the skilled labor and the amount that skilled labor is worth in South Africa, if that makes sense. So for um, m- countries with uh, stronger currencies like the UK and the US and stuff, I think you can get um, some good quality labor for a lot cheaper. So I'm seeing a few companies spin up that are taking advantage of that arbitrage, and it's a slightly different approach to um, the companies that are based in like India and the Philippines. Also, just to do with like time zones. Um, so yeah, I'm noticing that. Um, and South Africa is actually becoming a huge like food hub, like high quality, amazing restaurants because we've got amazing sort of natural resources. Um,
Mm.
and so I'm noticing that becoming a trend too. But yeah, it might be a bit outdated because I haven't been there in a while. But I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's all my questions for you.
Thanks. Well, thank you for joining me today, David. I really appreciate it. If people want to find out more about you and Limelight, where can they do so?
Yeah. So website limelighthq.com. And then I am very active on LinkedIn. So definitely follow me there. It's linkedin.com/DW1232. Or just search David Walsh Limelight. Um, and yeah, happy to connect with anyone that's watching this.
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.